before the event, so you just have to bear with this. I'll say these things fast, and there'll be small print that you'll never hear. I want to welcome you. I'm Judith Swift, and I'm from the Department of Communication Studies, and I am also one of the co-coordinators of the Honors Colloquium, along with Deborah Grossman-Garber, who is with the College of the Environment and Life Sciences, and Robert Thompson, who's with the Department of Community Planning and Landscape Architecture. Also, we have to thank Lorraine Keeney, who works with the Honors Colloquium as part of her responsibilities with the Sustainable Communities Initiative. There is going to be a reception following the talk and the question and answer period, and you are all invited to stay to have an opportunity for that one-on-one or three ganged up on one chat with Amory Lovins. The other thing is that we want to thank our many sponsors, in particular Narragansett Electric, who was very generous in their sponsorship of Mr. Lovins' appearance with us tonight. Kevin Art is here representing Narragansett Electric. Kevin, you are waved to us. Well, he's on his way from our earlier meeting. And the Sharp Family Foundation, the Rhode Island Committee for the Humanities, and many, many offices of the university, as well as other sponsors. We also have with us the Dean of the College of the Environment and Life Sciences, Jeff Seaman, and also the former interim dean, Bill Wright, who is now working with us as a professor of external affairs and special projects. Galen, are you here? Galen Johnson. Well, he's been here every other night. I just want to mention Galen. He is the director of the honors program and the person who is so very much behind the process of making sure that this colloquium goes on year after year. There is an evaluation form out there. We encourage you to leave us your email address if you would please. Why? Because it's a paperless way of filling out an evaluation form as opposed to killing a partial branch, perhaps, to do an evaluation form. But either way, we want to know what you think. So please, form, email address, take your pick, but do it for us. Thank you. We also would love to have your email address so that we can communicate with you about upcoming events that will relate to the Sustainable Communities Initiative. That's an ongoing initiative of the university with many exciting events, as well as a master plan to be unveiled as soon as we finish making it. Is that right, Bill? Is that fair to say? Okay. The other thing is there will be a question and answer period. When we get to the question and answer period, I am going to be absolutely totalitarian about the fact that we have to ask you to use the microphone. Why? Because we take this for archival and educational purposes. When we tape it, we like to have your question, because your question can be extraordinarily valuable to us as far as providing insight to what the answer is. So wait, Jane Murner will be our runner. She can sort of, forgive the sexism in this, the Vanna White mic bit for the night, okay? The restrooms are out to my right, your left, and don't turn off the lights thinking you'll turn on a light that's brighter. You'll actually go into a darker realm. It can be interesting. Turn off your pagers and cell phones. Unwrap your candy, unless it has quiet wrappers. Put it all unwrapped in your lap now. And take your Robitussin cough suppressant. I also want to remind you of upcoming events. On Thursday, October 18th, we have a public forum and reception based on the photography of sustainability. It's at 4 p.m. in the Fine Arts Center Recital Hall. This is part of a program that Judith Tolnick, curator of the URI galleries, has put together. It's an extraordinary series of exhibits. Go see them, go to the forum. On Tuesday, October 23rd, Timothy Bately will be coming here to discuss green design and sustainable cities. That will be at the PAC Auditorium in Providence, at the Alan Sean Feinstein College of Continuing Education in Providence. There is a bus that goes. You need a ride, let us know, you'll get there. He is a professor, Bately is a professor of urban and environmental planning at the University of Virginia. On Thursday, October 25th, lest you have an empty dance card, you can fill it tonight. We have Rhode Island's videographer, Jeff Adams, presenting Noise in My Backyard. It is an artist's videographer's view of sustainability. And there will be a discussion with Jeff Adams and others after the viewing. 7 p.m. in Chafee. That's on Thursday, October 25th. I remind you, anything you want to know about the colloquium, if you want this particular piece of paper and you want this information, all you have to do is go to our website, which is, and here comes the infomercial, www.uri.edu/sustainability. And if it comes up as spelled wrong, it isn't. Sustainability is a word that hasn't been recognized in dictionaries yet, and that's why we're here tonight. Or you can call 874-2381. That's www.uri.edu/sustainability or 874-2381. A reminder to register for the November 10th all-day event. There's a flyer out there with information. It is called Managing a Moving Target Symposium on Rhode Island's Coastal Ecosystems. This promises to be a standing room only event, so get online and register, folks. Okay, register. It is free except for the luncheon, which costs $5, and even that is a subsidy. So, that's all the housekeeping. To introduce this evening's guest, we have the former director of the Mississippi-Alabama Sea Grant Consortium, and as of September 1st of this year, the director of the Rhode Island Sea Grant Program, Barry Costa-Pierce. I want to give you a little information about Barry because he is new with us, and I think it's important to give us a sense of the quality of the individuals who choose to come to the University of Rhode Island. Dr. Costa-Pierce brings to Rhode Island a wide range of vital experience studying and protecting the marine environment. While serving as director of the Mississippi-Alabama Sea Grant Program, Costa-Pierce supervised completion of an inventory of marine science research and a comprehensive research plan for the Gulf of Mexico. He presently serves as the national co-chair of the Sea Grant Ecosystems and Habitat Steam Team. From 1985 to 92, Costa-Pierce was a research scientist and director for the International Center for Living Aquatic Resources Management in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malawi. He served as a staff consultant for the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and the U.S. Agency for International Development on environmental projects in numerous Asia, Pacific, and African nations. Before coming to Rhode Island, Costa-Pierce held various appointments at the University of California, Irvine, Goddard College, the University of Hawaii, the University of Minnesota, the Bemidji State University, so he knows bad weather when he sees it. Also at California State Polytechnic University, Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and the University of Oregon. And now that you've been duly impressed with that roster of accomplishments, consider the fact that Dr. Costa-Pierce is graciously here tonight to introduce this evening's speaker. Barry, if you would do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very gracious and unexpected invitation. But tonight is about Amory Lovins, and I get the distinct honor of singing the praises of one of the world's great thinkers, who, speaking very personally, has affected my life when I was a very young green undergraduate in 1977. Amory touched my life in a very, very special way and led me on a path that led to some of these accomplishments that you heard. But tonight is about Amory. Amory is truly for me, one of the Western world's greatest thinkers. He's also one of the Western world's greatest doers. He not only walks the walk, he talks the talk, he does it all. By that I mean is he sets by example what he has been thinking about for literally almost 30 years. So his institute, the Rocky Mountain Institute in Boulder, Colorado, as he so eloquently has shared with us, has gone through any number of banana crops this year, going to get sort of mangoes on the western slope of the Rocky Mountains with no auxiliary heat whatsoever. This is a research institute which not only looks at the basis of our energy consumption on a very personal basis, but an institutional basis, a state of the Colorado basis, the United States basis, the world basis. So Emory has affected our lives very deeply. Back in President Carter era, Amory changed the way that we thought about our everyday lives. By that I mean is that he birthed another path, the soft energy path. What he called back in those days, the path not taken, the path of energy conservation, And what I think even more so is not only pointing the finger at the problem being exterior to us, but pointing the finger right back at us. I remember one of the most heartwarming stories I can tell about Amory is after I heard his lecture at the University of Vermont for the first time, I went back and madly took out all of the energy-consuming fixtures in our Vermont farmhouse and went madly shopping around for the kinds of energy fixtures that he talked about, because I knew what he was saying would prevent the building or the expansion of the Seabrook nuclear power plant at that time. Amory was able to sort of look at what Thomas More calls like person-planet issues better than anyone that I've ever met. This guy really is seamless right across the board. His academic life is connected to his personal life in a way like I've never seen before with any intellectual. Let me sing his praises even more. His education is from Harvard and Oxford. He has co-authored about 27 books and hundreds of papers. Been at the leadership table with over 12 countries, consulting with presidents of those countries about the way forward. Energy issues notwithstanding, he has also looked at water, power, right down the stream of where energy affects our society. Originally, he was trained as an experimental physicist, and he rose to prominence during the oil crisis of the 1970s. He was still in his 20s at the time, and he challenged our country to look at supply side or expanding our energy, building more nuclear power plants, oil-fired power plants, and looking at soft energy path or conservation rather than this. He wrote a very influential paper back in those times in the 70s that was widely featured in Foreign Policy magazine called The South Path, the Path Not Taken. He followed it up with a book that influenced President Carter very deeply called Brittle Power, Energy Strategy for National Security. His recent accomplishments are no less sterling. He has written a book that I recommend to everyone called Natural Capitalism. He has pioneered the concept of a hypercar. He is involved with his wife, Hunter, in many, many projects with the Rocky Mountain Institute that really set an example for the 21st century. When I say that, it's funny. When I met Amory in the 70s, I said, you know, he was an example for the 70s, and then when I met him in the 80s, an example for the 80s, and it seems like hopefully someday our society will hear Amory deeply. So with warm arms and big hugs and great intellectual fervor, I welcome Amory Lovins to the University of Rhode Island.
Thank you very much. Tactful of you not to mention that having attended Harvard and Oxford, I dropped out of both. Specialized too much. I've been asked to talk about natural capitalism, a possibly puzzling title. There's a book of that name, Paul Hawken and Amory Lovins. Let me go back to first principles by reminding us that capitalism is supposed to be about the productive use of and reinvestment in capital. But what's capital? Well, there are at least four kinds of it. Industrial capitalism, as we have known it, only deals with two kinds, namely money and goods. But there are at least two other important kinds, namely people and nature. And indeed, without nature, without natural capital, there is no life and therefore no economic activity. So leaving out those two is a rather important omission. And Paul Hawken, our co-author, picked the title Natural Capitalism partly to indicate that this is a capitalism that takes account of all four forms of capital. And partly, I think, to suggest slightly that industrial capitalism is unnatural, is a temporary aberration, which it is, not because it's capitalism, but because it's defying its own logic by liquidating and not valuing its largest source of capital, namely the natural world. Just ask, by the way, is it possible to take these lights down so they're not shining right on the screen? Thanks. The importance of the natural world was re-emphasized almost a decade ago when $200 million investment and a lot of good science put into this Biosphere 2 structure in the Arizona desert proved unable, among other things, to provide breathable air for 8 people. One of the many nifty services that Biosphere 1 outside these walls provides to 6 billion of us every day for free, along with lots of biogeochemical cycles and other things that are worth a lot. Scientists try to estimate how much it's worth, and other nature services are probably worth at least as much as gross world product. But whatever the right number is, we know it's not zero, as it's now assumed to be, and it's better to be approximately right than precisely wrong. Now, the ecosystem services like cycling nutrients and controlling pests and pathogens and regulating the climate until we started experimenting with it are things that we haven't the foggiest idea how to do ourselves. There are a few exceptions. We do know, for example, how to pollinate plants, although if you try hand pollinating the planet, you'll find it does quickly become tedious. And we don't know very much about assimilating and detoxifying society's wastes. But as ecosystems around the world fall into decline, and therefore their ability to deliver ecosystem services vital to life also falls behind schedule, the human prospect is starting to be limited not by how many boats and nets we have, but by the fish in the sea, not by chainsaws, but by forests, not by plows, but by fertile land, not by irrigation pumps, but by fresh water. Now, the last time human progress was being seriously limited by a shortage of something was about a quarter millennium ago at the start of the first industrial revolution, because at that time there weren't enough weavers, for example, to make enough cloth in England to be affordable for most people. And if anybody had come into Parliament around 1750 and said, don't worry, we'll just make weavers 100 times more productive, nobody would have understood this notion, because labor productivity was not then conceived of as something you could increase. But it's what happened as profit-maximizing capitalists teamed up with technical innovators, and soon Fisher Spinner could actually produce the cloth that had previously required 200 weavers. And as that sort of innovation spread through one sector after another, it gave us affordable mass goods, purchasing power, middle class, and all these artifacts that we now think of as the fruits of the first industrial revolution. And its logic was simple and obvious, that if the relative scarcity of people is limiting progress in exploiting seemingly boundless nature, the logical thing to do is make people more productive. Economics does correctly and logically tell us to economize on our scarcest resource, but we have to be careful about what that is, because now in the next industrial revolution, already underway, the pattern of scarcity has reversed. What we are now short of is not people, but nature. We now have abundant people and scarce nature, not the other way around. So now it's not people, but nature that we need to be using far more productively, bringing 4 or 10 or 100 times as much benefit from each unit of energy, water, materials, topsoil, whatever we're borrowing from the planet. That radical increase in resource productivity is the first of 4 interlinked principles of natural capitalism, but not the only one, as is sometimes assumed. There are 3 more equally important ones that all interlock. The second is to redesign production on biological lines with closed loops, no waste, and no toxicity. Not just less, but 0. I think Bill McDonough has already talked to you about that. And then there's a new business model, which Jim Womack calls the solutions economy, where instead of just making and selling things occasionally, we shift to providing a continuous flow of value and service in a way that rewards both the provider and the customer for following the first two steps. And then what do we do with the profits? Well, remember, capitalism is about productive reinvestment of profits back into capital. And typically the best place to reinvest is the kind of capital you're shortest of, which in this case is nature. That's something any prudent capitalist would know to do. Let me go through each of these, and I'll start with and emphasize the first one, namely eliminating waste and turning it into profit. You would think that after millennia of doing that, there wouldn't be much waste left by now, but in fact, there's an enormous and ever-expanding amount. For example, in this country, the amount of stuff that we dig up and process and move around and use and throw away, that mass flow that does such damage to nature, works out to about 20 times your body weight per person per day. And that does not count, by the way, water that's returned clean, but only water that's returned contaminated. That's a lot of stuff. Worldwide, it's getting on for 500 billion tons per year, of which, however, only 1% gets into durable products. The other 99% is waste, also known as a vast business opportunity. Now, we're used to thinking of energy waste in that way. In fact, after saving about 200 billion bucks a year worth of energy, we're still wasting 300 billion bucks a year worth of energy. You know, the efficiency of converting fuel at the power plant into light in this room is about 3%. Our cars only use 1% of their fuel energy to move the driver. Our power plants throw away as waste heat the same amount of energy that Japan uses for everything, and not even their economy is even a tenth as energy efficient as the laws of physics permit. So there's a lot still to be done. And we do indeed have very powerful technologies now available to make existing buildings typically 3 or 4 times more energy and water efficient, and new ones about 10 times more energy efficient, but typically cheaper. And we've already started on this course. In fact, the reduced energy intensity of the U.S. economy in the past quarter century now provides 2/5 of our energy services. It's the fastest growing source. It's over 5 times as big as domestic oil production, over twice oil imports, about 13 times Persian Gulf imports. We've already doubled our oil productivity since '75. Did anybody notice? And we've only just started to make serious inroads on electric productivity, partly because in, I believe this state, in fact in all states except Oregon at the moment, utilities are rewarded for selling more energy and penalized for cutting the bill. A few examples of what we could do. I'll show you in a minute our passive solar banana farm, which is actually not in Boulder, but on the western slope in Old Snowmass, at 7,100 feet. And with no furnace, we've grown 27 banana crops so far. Temperatures down occasionally to minus 47 F. And our household electric bill is about 1/10 normal at $5 a month, or that's what it would be if we didn't make any with solar. We bought it all from the utility. In fact, we make 5 or 6 times that with solar, sell it back at the same price. It's kind of fun. I just got a call from my utility saying, hey, we haven't had any bill for you the last few months. Is there something wrong? No. And we've done the same trick getting rid of air conditioning at temperatures up to 115 Fahrenheit, again with lower construction costs and better comfort. Or in Bangkok, which is a really tough climate, a friend of mine built an ordinary cost, very nice house, using 1/10 the normal amount of air conditioning energy with better comfort. We know how to save about 80 or 90% of the energy in big office buildings, new ones, with faster and cheaper construction and better human and market performance. We've shown how to save 3/4 of the energy retrofitting a big Chicago office tower. Chicago is, of course, both very hot and humid and very cold. And that costs no more than the regular 20-year renovation that saves nothing. And I think our record so far designing a retrofit for a California office air conditioning system was a 97% energy saving with good economics and better comfort. Well, here's the banana farm. It's in an area whose weather might be described as 2 seasons, winter and July, because you can get frost any day of the year. We've had it on the 4th of July. And you can get 39 days of continuous midwinter cloud. And yet, if you come in out of a snowstorm to this atrium in the middle of this house and research center, there you are in the banana jungle. You can get your advanced lizarding lesson from the senior tutor over here. And we don't have a heating system, and we don't have one because we don't need it, and it's cheaper up front not to have it. Huh? I mean, if you were to ask a typical engineer, how much insulation should you have in a very cold climate, you'd probably be told, well, put in just as much as will pay for itself over the years from the safe heating fuel. Which sounds logical. I mean, you don't want to pay more than it's worth, do you? But it's incorrect because it leaves out something important. I don't just mean the environment. It leaves out the capital cost of the heating system, right? Furnace, ducts, pipes, wires, controls, fuel source, those are not counted. And they should be, because if you have enough insulation and super windows that insulate like, say, 8 to 12 sheets of glass but look like 2 and cost less than 3, and air-to-air heat exchangers so that the outgoing stale air preheats the incoming fresh air, guess what? You don't need a furnace. And the stuff you do to get rid of the furnace costs less to install than the furnace would have cost. So their construction cost goes down. And then we reinvested that saved money plus some more, totaling $1.50 per square foot, to save also half the water, 99% of the water heating energy, and 90% of the household electricity. And all of that stuff together paid for itself in 10 months with 1983 technology. Well, 18 years later, we can do a lot better than that, but that was a pretty good start. And